somehow in the northeast of Iraq, or on the border between Iraq and Pakistan. From this direction, CNN, BBC, all these guys interpreting emphasize the role of Iraq. So Osama bin Laden plus Saddam Hussein, I suppose you know who was Saddam Hussein, ex-president of Iraq, who was hanged 6 or 7 years ago, I think. Anyway, and emphasis was on the role of Iraq. Nobody even mentioned Afghanistan. And then suddenly, in 1 or 2 months, I'm not sure when, it must be, if it is September, it could be November, it is possible to check, it is no problem. It could be, or even late October, November, or even December of the same year, 2001, US went in Afghanistan with a quite huge intervention. And you know, if they are going to Afghanistan, it has nothing to do with Iraq. Their argument, the Iraq, Saddam, and Obama were the leading guys, bad guys, in the 9th September, was somehow an empirical evidence that something else is taking place. So your question is, why Afghanistan? And why now out of Afghanistan? They are not going out of Afghanistan, it's for sure. Formally, nominally, it could be the case. But real, at the level of reality, no. So the question is, what is the importance of Afghanistan for United States? It's not important for, I don't know, let's say Netherlands or Sweden or Germany, but for United States and Britain, definitely. And the answer is twofold. One, and less important, is strategic role of Afghanistan with regard to Russia. So it's very good position to produce a new garrisons, new installations for rocket installations and so on against Russia, especially in connection with Chechnya, Nagorno-Karabakh, and so on. This is one side. And of course, it was very easily done. And today, United States has a couple of them very important installations in Afghanistan, and NATO forces, including Slovenian forces, Croatian forces, I think even Serbian forces, in terms of Serbian guys, Croatian guys, Slovene guys, and so on, are serving in Afghanistan. Is the same from Italians, and so on and so forth. The most important point I would like to emphasize, and that's the way how it is possible to answer your question, Ivana, is that Afghanistan, you should know, it's very, very important, if not the most important point, for financing wars. If you want to understand wars of today, then their main problem is financing. After Vietnam War included, states are not main financing forces in investing in wars, but wars are self-financing corporate projects. So the problem is, what could be the connection between Afghanistan financing the war if Afghanistan is the biggest poverty in the world you can find today is not in Africa anymore. It's not in South America, in Asia, but in Afghanistan. So when we are speaking about Afghanistan, we have something which is totally unlogical, total poverty. Important role as far as the war in the Middle East is concerned, and at the same time, object of occupation from the side of United States. What's the answer? The answer is heroin. The answer is drugs. The highest, the strongest producer of drugs, especially of heroin in the world, is Afghanistan. The problem is that you have no idea about this because history being taught at the university is bullshit, total bullshit. Well, for example, I will try to explain to you the very logic, how things are functioning in the last 5 centuries. And the same is reappearing today. When they are teaching you in the schools, for example, the role of Indonesia, India, China, and even sometimes Japan for the West, they are selling you the story of spices, tea, and they're interpreting your history of the West in the sense, oh, they had a good ships, extremely important navy, especially Great Britain. They were importing spices, sugar, pepper, and they are listing everything they can with one small exception. Never ever they emphasize the import and the handling of drugs, of cocaine, of heroin, of enormous quantities of drugs coming from the Far East. The role of China, the role of India, the reason for the so-called Boxers' War at the beginning of 20th century is always one and the same, is drugs. So when you think about the development, money, richness, wealthness in the West, do not be naive. It's not about technology. It's not about marketing. It's not about buying and selling this unimportant spices, sugar, and so on. It's always in the center of it is drugs. This is the most important thing as far as the richness of the West is concerned. It's not even oil, but drugs. So it's very important to understand this connection between drugs, wealth in the West, and later on war in the West and for Westernness in connection with the drugs. Afghanistan is the very center of production of raw material because drugs, for example, if I would say, I don't know, heroin is something which is coming from the from nature, but it's a raw material, and you should develop this raw material into something which is serious drug. It's very similarly as far as heroin is concerned, is let's say Coke in Colombia, in South America, Central South America. It's always the same story. Before, in the 60s and 70s, it was Laos, Burma, and above everything, Vietnam. That was the reason why Vietnam, why Indochina. It's about drugs. And be serious, don't be naive. Always think in terms of drugs. And then this raw material from Afghanistan is running directly to Turkey. In Turkey, you have factories for development this raw material. And from Turkey, it's going by NATO planes. Distribution is functioning through NATO planes. It's the best organized business in history. It's not about mafia. Mafia is controlling just one small piece of it. And police is fighting usually mafia, a couple of tons, couple of kilos. When we are speaking about Afghanistan, we are speaking about hundreds and thousands and 10,000s and 100,000s of tons. Consumption of drugs around the globe is in thousands of tons. And the most important organizer, distributor is NATO, is United States, is CIA. Clinton was very, very closely in this game. So the answer to your question, Ivana, Afghanistan is a factory of money. Due to this factory of money, it's possible to finance wars in the Middle East. It was similar in Vietnam. It could be similar as well tomorrow. United States, especially now, has no possibility of financing war. War is the most disastrous event in human history, and there is no state in the world be capable of investing in 50 wars, more than 50 wars, after Second World War, as United States was engaged in. So when we are speaking about Afghanistan, actually we are speaking about drugs. So formally, from the point of view of the, I don't know, tanks, rockets, international law, they will go back. It could be after 20 years, do not forget it. But at the level of reality, thousands of private companies, individuals, would control the production of heroin always and in years in advance. And it could last for centuries. It was story about China. It was way how Britain controlled China, trying to think China is the colossus, the biggest state in the world. And it was controlled firstly by Portugal. Portugal is something as Croatia or Serbia. Could you imagine the logic? How Portugal was capable of controlling China? How it was possible? It was everything based on drugs. So try more seriously, take into account not only oil, armies, gold, silver, Bitcoin. Everybody is now speaking in terms of gold, Bitcoin, silver, blah, 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 blah. But the main money is always twofold. One is I tried to bring into your thinking is drugs. Another even more important money in these bloody games is a female body, is a woman. It's about control of female bodies. Who controls female bodies? Control all desires of human beings, because humans actually are functioning as a man, as a male population. Female population is not grasped as human, it's subhuman. So if you want to understand how things are real functioning in this bloody not world anymore, then think into account firstly drugs and then female bodies. And in the last years and decades, this role of female bodies is diminishing, is getting less and less important, because the progress of artificial intelligence and other type of technological progress are opening totally new front in this sense. And you will be extremely careful at this point. This new front is front revolving around children, and besides around children and the parts of human beings. So the biggest quantity of money are revolving around drugs, female bodies, children bodies. These are new forms of slavery. and parts of body, hearts, pulmons, livers. That's the reason why you should try to think differently. Skip naivety and blah, blah arguing at universities and faculties. They are teaching you as in the 19th century. They are preaching you about economy. They are preaching you about technology. They are preaching you about materialism. They are preaching you or about God, about religion, or about love, about happiness, about freedom, blah, 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 blah. If you want to understand the bloodiest moment in history of humankind that you are living in, you should be bloodily realistic, which means, and conclusion, drugs, female bodies, children, and parts of humans. This is the epicenter, center around which everything is revolving. And then war, and then Wall Street, and then Bitcoin, and then gold. And you should go round and around and around. So the mindset of more postmodern barbaric masters is developing in very, very decadent direction. That's something which you should take into account. So if you are a master, you can have, and you are heterosexual, you can have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old girl every day, new one. That's the logic how things are functioning. We are beyond humanity. We are opening problem of something which is transhuman. And if you want to understand, do not be naive and think in terms of humanity and morality. We are beyond good and evil, as Nietzsche emphasized in the late 19th century. This beyond good and evil is something which is cynical. We are living in a cynical world. An understanding of Afghanistan, in order to understand Afghanistan, the logic of United States, you should understand cynicism of time, cynical mindset of Bush father, of Bush grandfather, of Clinton's, of Biden's. In this bloody story, Trump is a lesser evil. This is a tragical paradox. Trump is an idiot. And he's still normal in the sense that he's radically conservative. And he has this or that, a woman. He's not buying children. And besides, as far as his racism is concerned, his first wife was Czech woman. He's very closely connected via Ivana Trump with Czech culture and also today with Czech family, former family. His second wife is Slovene. Try to think if he would be a racist. Racism is not only about black and white. It's also about Slavic nations and people. It's also about, I don't know, and so on. And he's in the position of power. He could have a child every day. And a lot of these guys are in this story of children. And if you want to understand the importance of this, Gregson, Maxwell, and so on, these things connected with quite important things taking place at the level of jury, United States, you should try to follow and understand. So to put it in a very simple way, Afghanistan is very, very important symptom because it's not possible to explain it in terms of geostrategy, forces, location. It's about drugs. And drugs are in the very center. of this bloody disintegration of the West. West is disintegrating. Not only West, but we are speaking about the West in this case. Oh, I was too long, but maybe could be useful for some of you, because I'm sure that you are not going to hear this kind of thinking arguments in the future. And maybe one thing more before we start with Serbia. How many buildings were destroyed in 9/11, 2001? How many buildings fell down that day? Do you understand the question? This is now architectural question. Question about physical. Janko, yeah. Go on, Janko.
Two. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah. We can hear you. Do you hear me or us?
Yeah.
Great. So the question was, how many buildings? And the answer is 2. Because the last 20 years, especially for your generation, these 2 buildings is something which is appearing and reappearing, so to speak, daily. Thousands of times, North Tower and South Tower came in front of your eyes, and you are absolutely sure that 2 towers went down, full stop. The story is not about the first and second tower. The story of 9/11 is a story about third, not tower. And the name of this third, not tower, is the Building 7. The Building 7 were concentrated documents of the CIA and another members of intelligence community, and also data about money as far as United States Army Pentagon is concerned, and everything was destroyed. Nothing serious, nothing of importance was located in North on South Tower, but everything was in Building 7. Building 7 is totally covered. And nobody is thinking about Building 7. And you, as a totally new generation, you have no idea about the very existence of Building 7. This is the example how things are functioning. So if you want to understand Afghanistan, you should go 9/11. If you want to understand 9/11, you should go in Building 7, and everything is covered. Everything is covered. This is about mind control. This is about the way how things at the level of mass media manipulation are functioning today. So try to remember, try to keep in your mind just one small data, Building 7. And then in next months and years, I'm not kidding, months and years, start your research about Building 7. And then at the end of the story, you will be capable of developing totally different interpretation of what's going on in the United States, what took place at the beginning of 21st century, what was the importance of 9/11, what is the role of Afghanistan, and then, and only then, you can answer the question about are they going out of Afghanistan? Do you understand how complex things are?